Star Trek Picard, Season 3, Episode 1, The Next Generation. Well, honestly, it wasn't very good.
I don't understand the people who are saying that this was good. I have some good things later we can talk about that was in here. There are parts of good in here, but there was a lot in here that reminded me a lot of how Kurtzman Trek works, including the visuals, but not stopping at the visuals.
I think I see a lot of people comparing it to the other Kurtzman Trek. And I see them saying how, well, it's not this, and it's not this, and it's not this. There's no ripping out of eyeballs or things like that. But I didn't really see people talking about what it actually was. I guess I'll just start at the beginning. It starts with Beverly Crusher on board a ship. And it's being boarded by, I don't know, clicking alien things in, like, bird masks, I guess.
The Court of Owls were attacking her ship.
Yeah, she locked somebody in what was a closet or something. I don't even know. Her rifle was utterly bizarre. I've never seen anyone have to cock a rifle in space like that, but whatever.
You and I talked about this, and I'm open to being, like, educated here, but she had this rifle, and she was like a shotgun. She was cocking it after each round. So at first I'm like, okay, it's like a grenade launcher or something. But then there was, as she was shooting, it said something like battery pack empty. And I'm guessing she had to put a new battery pack in.
That was pretty quick.
So it must not have been any sort of grenades. It must have been an energy weapon. So why do you have to pump the weapon like a shotgun?
I don't know.
Weird.
It seemed very impractical, especially with the red lights along the side. I mean, fighting in the dark like that, they're going to easily be able to spot you because your weapon is, like, glowing.
What I think it was, and I said this to you as we were watching it, I remember in Terminator 2 when Sarah Connor had that shotgun and she was trying to blast the Terminator into the metal pit, and she was cocking the gun in a cool way. I think that was just done that way because it looked cool to pump a shotgun, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
Even though it made very little sense in this context. That opening scene with Dr. Crusher was, oh my gosh, that was one of the scenes in this episode that I absolutely despised. It was just bad.
Yeah, so she kills the intruders. However, she's hit by their weapons in the process. She sends the subspace message to Admiral Picard we saw in the trailer, and it goes into Picard at his chateau. He and Laris are supposed to be going to some planet where she's setting up some sort of diplomatic security. Once he gets that message from Dr. Crusher, well, that's all shot to shit because obviously he's going to drop everything to go save Beverly, even though he hasn't spoken to her in over 20 years. The part with Picard and Laris, and Picard just in his study when he gets the message from his old communicator, those were actually good scenes.
Yeah, the Laris and Picard one in front of the fireplace, the dialogue they had, that was a good scene. Like, that was the best scene in this whole episode, and it was good. So not even just relatively speaking, it was a good scene regardless of comparing it to the rest of the episode.
Yeah, and there were some callbacks there. Picard had his little ships, or at least a few of them, like from First Contact, and it looked like maybe the flute from Inner Light. I couldn't get a real good look at it. I was trying to take notes while I was watching. But, I mean, that's okay. But I kind of felt like I was being catered to as far as fan service goes with some of these things. If they had just stopped with the painting on the wall of the Enterprise D, I think that would have been enough. But they just kind of kept piling it on.
They did that through a lot of this episode.
Picard was going through his mementos. He was going to send that painting to Geordi. You know, someone could argue, well, he's just going through all of his stuff. But again, that was a contrived thing for him to be going through all of his stuff so that he could show off his Star Trek cred going back to The Next Generation and the Next Generation movies. So, whatever. But I thought that Patrick Stewart and whoever it is who plays Laris, I thought they did a really great job. Their acting was actually very good in those scenes. It's a shame I can't say that for everybody in this episode. But after that, and it's determined that, of course, Picard is going to go after Beverly Crusher, he goes looking for Riker, and they meet up in a bar. He tells Riker what's going on. Riker alludes to him having some sort of family problems, that his wife and daughter wouldn't mind him to be absent for a little while. So that was weird. But again, it was in this scene, Jonathan Frakes stole the show because he nailed the Will Riker character, who the character was back in TNG. And that was actually really refreshing to see.
I agree. That bar scene where he was talking to Riker, that was the last scene of this episode I enjoyed. Jonathan Frakes, he remembered how to play Will Riker, and he did a great job playing him. It's too bad that Will Riker spent most of this episode talking to Patrick Stewart and not Jean-Luc Picard, but that's a topic for later on in the video.
After that, we go find Rafi on Metalis Prime. Yes, Terry Metalis named a planet after himself.
Sheer effing hubris.
And this planet looked like a cross between Blade Runner and the Upside Down from Stranger Things, because it had all this weird white floaty stuff in the air. But
you couldn't see anything. This whole episode, minus one time, it was so dark, you could barely see what was going on. When Rafi was on this planet, I couldn't see what she was doing until she sat at the bar and there was a light on her. But even then, I'm like squinting, going, what's going on there?
It's to hide the wrinkles.
Yeah, but I don't think she's, compared to her other castmates, she's one of the young ones on the cast.
I know, but they got to do that for everybody. The whole thing.
That scene, that whole planet scene, was as bad as the opening scene with Dr. Crusher. I don't know if the actress who plays Rafi, I don't know, I haven't seen her in other stuff. I don't know if she can act or not. I'm going to assume she can. But what she was playing in this part is she was pretending to be something she wasn't.
She was pretending to be a junkie, talking to this drug dealer, trying to get information out of him about thefts from the Daystrom Institute, which apparently was some sort of weapon of mass destruction. Yeah, again, her acting was very over the top, and it was just too much. She was pretending to be some sort of drug-addled person, but she's asking these really pointed questions that were just a little bit too specific. Yeah, that drug dealer should have run in the other direction, because it was clear that she was some sort of narc. I mean, seriously.
It was either she was pretending to be a bad narc, or they just didn't do a very good job, because if I was that guy, I would have said, he tried a couple of times, get out of here. But she kept bad acting at him, and then he just said, okay, and he gave her some information.
Yeah, he told her the red lady, and it's like, okie dokie. And then he told her to get lost, and he should have just told her to get lost before that, because, geez Louise. If I was some sort of drug dealer and somebody was acting like that, I'd be like, yeah, narc, I'm out of here. She had the drugs, and I don't know if she was supposed to be, tempted to use them or something, but there was half a second where she's looking at them and then she just dumped them. I mean, that just seemed really a bizarre scene.
Like it just fell out of her hand and it fell on the ground.
Yep, she's just gonna dump these drugs here. She I just oh goodness gracious.
Plus that planet she was on reminded you, but you mentioned it and I'm like, yep.
Oh yeah.
Of that, at the end of season 1 of Discovery, when Empress Georgiou was on that planet.
For her threesome.
Yeah, it was the edge of the cliff. No, it was Kronos, I think.
I believe it was Kronos.
And it reminded me of that sort of... they were trying to make this Blade Runner type world. I would say it was better done here, but it was so dark I couldn't see a lot of what was going on. Other than when she looked up, you saw a Blade Runner type city. I disliked this whole scene with Rafi. I was sitting there having Discovery flashbacks how bad it was.
Yep. So then we see Riker and Picard, and they are attempting to hitch a ride on the Titan, which apparently used to be Will Riker's ship, but now there's a Captain Shaw in charge. 7 of 9 is his number 1. So he's making her go by Annika instead of 7 of 9, because apparently he doesn't like having a former Borg. I mean, what is... The portrayal of this Captain Shaw was so over the top. I mean, he was so confrontational with Riker and Picard. I could not believe how poorly written this part was. He was a real mustache twirling baddie. It's the kind of stuff I would expect some woke person to write as the white male villain. It was really bad, and I don't know why anybody would watch that and think that that was good. I mean, it was clearly over-dramatized to have an effect, but it was so over the top that it was just stupid.
It felt like he was, to me anyway, like he was trying to play Captain Lorca from Discovery, because beginning of season 1 of Discovery, Captain Lorca was probably the Jason Isaacs, is that his name? Mm-hmm. He was probably the most interesting part of that whole Discovery season. Except this Captain Shaw has none of the charisma of Jason Isaacs. And I know you weren't supposed to like this guy, but it was over the top. Like,
he seemed like a buffoon.
Yes. I mean, it was bad. It was, yes, we know we're not supposed to like him, but now you're playing it so over the top, it's getting ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, the guy was so straight-laced and confrontational, he just came across like a jackass.
A retired admiral and a captain who probably have connections all within Starfleet and is behaving like a jackass to them. Mm-hmm. And I don't he gave an explanation of, well, you're retired and you're a captain without a seat, and I answer to people above you with higher pay grade or whatever. He said some crap like that. Mm-hmm. I just was waiting for him to take his finger and thumb and like twirl his mustache. He didn't have one.
Yeah, he had a mustache.
Well, not just a mustache.
He had a full beardy beta male.
I was just waiting for him to twist it like some evil person.
Ugh.
And I want to say some things about this whole on the Titan thing. Are we at a point now where I can vent a bit, or do you got a little bit more explaining before I...
Well, it depends. I was going to go into how Seven helps them and how Geordi's daughter is there.
Why don't you do that, but before we move on, then say, old man, you got anything to say about this before we move on? Because I got a lot I want to say about this whole thing.
Yeah, so Ensign Sidney LaForge is there, and of course Will Riker knows her and embarrasses her, because that's apparently what adults that are friends of your parents are supposed to do to you, I guess. But, so the quarters that Picard and Riker were given, it was like bunk beds, and it looked like it was some sort of general quarters that ensigns would use. It was just, oh god. So anyways, Seven has them come to the observation deck, and she's disobeyed Captain Shaw, and she's taken them out to the edge of Federation space where they need to go to find Beverly Crusher. She's talking about how she misses being in the Rangers, and apparently she blames Picard and Janeway for her decision to join Starfleet. She has managed to make it so that Picard and Riker can take a shuttlecraft over to Beverly Crusher's ship. And of course, Captain Shaw wakes up and comes to the bridge, and he's telling her that she's loyaltied her way right out of her career. And it was so absurd. This was just awful. So anyways, go ahead and say what you want to say.
So when they were on the Titan, when they first came on the Titan, they were in space dock. So the first question I have is, I believe it was last season, 7 of 9 said that she couldn't get into Starfleet because they were bigoted against Borg.
Yep.
So somehow she got in. She's first officer on this ship with a commander rank.
Yep.
How many years has passed between season 2 and now? How do you go from they wouldn't let me in to I'm a commander and first officer on a starship?
Yep.
I was asking questions. I have no idea what the answer is. Secondly, that part where LaForge's daughter was on the ship navigating or piloting, I forget which seat she was at. But that reminded me of that scene in Generations where they had Sulu's daughter. It just seemed like it was a rip-off of that scene.
Yep.
And then finally, when they were leaving space dock, actually when they were on the bridge of the Titan, they were playing this music with different musical cues that called back to old motion picture era and TNG type music. But it was so loud that sometimes it was drowning out the dialogue. So what it was basically telling me, it was yelling, "This is Star Trek, this is Star Trek." Of course, the bridge was so dark I couldn't tell you if it was Star Trek. And what it reminded me of is there's a set of YouTube videos out there you can find. The videos it's about the Big Bang Theory, and they take out the laugh track. The video series is supposed to tell people by stripping out the laugh track that the show isn't funny if you take out the laugh track. That's open to your own interpretation on whether you think that's true or not. But this felt to me like if you stripped out the music, I'm tempted to take the music out and just watch the scenes again. They were trying to sell that this was Star Trek so hard by blasting that music at you during that bridge scene. As I said, it was drowning out dialogue. That's why I was talking to Mollie during this. I'm like, don't they normally crank up the music like when the ship's leaving space dock? That's how they used to do it. Mm-hmm. but now just as they're talking, they're blaring the music. So when they were leaving Space Dock, and the Admiral Picard told 7 of 9 to take it out of dock, and she was very uncomfortable with that. We all know where this is going. That was a callback to the Wrath of Khan and Kirk having Saavik, or Spock I guess it was, having Saavik take the ship out. All this is callbacks and playing music. That bridge scene, I got angrier and angrier the longer it went on because it was beyond callbacks and I was feeling insulted after a while. So maybe it's just me, but of all the parts of that episode, that bridge scene irritated me the most because I could tell it was trying really, really hard to say, this is Star Trek, and they were throwing everything they could at me to try to get me to believe that.
Yeah. So then we cut to Rafi, and she's watching some video of some little kid. I assume that must be her granddaughter, I guess. She's trying to, I guess, chat with somebody, or her contact at Starfleet Intelligence. It seemed, I mean, obviously it was a computerized voice that this person was using to communicate with her handler, but it felt like she was just dealing with some AI, and she wanted to meet because she was really struggling with living on that horrible planet, not making any headway, trying to find out where these WMDs are, and it was awful. And then she finally figures out that the Red Lady is some statue dedication ceremony, apparently a statue to Rachel Garrett, as it turns out. It really felt like, again, it was just more member berries. Like, why are they dedicating a statue to her then? That was just weird.
They keep doing these callbacks, and what it does is it makes the whole universe of Star Trek feels so small. It's like in Star Wars where everything revolved around 2 families, the Palpatines and the Skywalkers. It makes the world feel so small if that's all you have. And that's what this feels like we're in a really small, not to mention they were going on the edge of Federation space. And how it felt like they got there in 5 minutes on the Titan?
Yeah, it did. And then I don't know where Rafi was having to go from Metalis, whatever the hell, Prime, to where this Red Lady statue was. I don't know if that was back on Earth or what, but she got there lickety-split. And she's trying to warn the people on the ground that she thinks that a terrorist attack is imminent. And of course, all she gets is static. And then she sees this big hole, I guess, open up in the ground, and the building falls right in. And then a big hole opens up in the sky and the building falls out of it. I mean, oh my god. It was just like, geez. Yeah, I'm so tired of just the over-the-top stuff. Everything has to be drama. Like wall-to-wall, heart-pounding story.
I don't even know what that was, and I guess that's part of the mystery, but it was stupid. The visual effect was stupid. It didn't even look like it was a good CGI when the building was falling down. It looked like CGI from the early 2000s. It looked pretty bad.
Yeah. So, then we're back to Riker and Picard, and they park their shuttle and go into Beverly's ship, and there's music playing, and Picard said that there was a part of a music compilation that he'd given to her in lieu of wine and roses. I'm sitting there, and I said to the old man, I said, so what, he gave her a mixtape? I mean, I don't understand what the obsession with the music is in this episode. At the very beginning, I'm pretty sure that the music that Picard was playing on his 25th century phonograph, and I mean phonograph, not record player, phonograph. I think it was the music from that video game Fallout 4. I mean, I don't know what they were doing. I just don't, because of course when they were at that dinner scene with Captain Dickhead, he was complaining that he had to wipe all of Riker's jazz music out of the memory banks of the Titan because it used to be Will's ship.
I heard somebody say that was a callback, somebody online, that there was a Lower Decks episode where they dealt with that storyline. So I think that's a reference to that. But again, it's a callback to something else.
Yeah, so anyway, Picard and Riker are walking through the ship, and they find, scorch marks from from weapon blasts, and there's a big scorch mark on the floor where clearly somebody had been turned to ash, and they're like, oh, it's not the Beverly I remember. Well, she must have been, desperate or some shit. I don't even know. That was stupid. And so anyway, Picard finally finds Beverly in a stasis pod, and some young man puts a gun on Will Riker, and they go into where Beverly and Picard are. As it turns out, this young man is Beverly Crusher's son. The implication, I would assume, would be that Captain Picard, or now Admiral Picard, is his father. That's what I inferred anyway.
Again, remember that TNG episode Bloodlines where he thought he had a son?
Yep.
They're doing it again, except this time it's probably going to be true.
Yep. So, yeah. And then, of course, the ship there starts getting attacked again, and that's where we leave off with this episode. And the ship that came out of the clouds that's attacking them looks a lot like the ship from Star Trek 2009, the JJ film.
It looked to me like the Andromeda Ascendant. So they met the Andromeda Ascendant. That's where it ended.
Yeah.
That's some real nice spaceship design. Yeah, it looked a lot like Nero's ship from 2009.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to say, is Kevin Sorbo inside?
Yeah,
but this is Andromeda.
But to me, I thought it was the Andromeda Ascendant because it looked a lot like the Andromeda Ascendant.
Yeah. So there were parts of this episode that I genuinely liked. And I was sitting there watching that scene with Picard and Laris, and I was thinking to myself, maybe this actually is going to be good. And that lasted for just a few more minutes, and then I realized, nope, this is more of the same. I was trying to look past the teal and orange and the fact that everything was so dark I could barely see what was going on.
The cinematography in this is
horrible.
It is worse than anything but maybe the first season of Discovery, where it was nearly impossible to see anything there.
Yeah.
This cinematography is horrible. It is difficult to see anything.
Yep, so I didn't like the cinematography, didn't like the way they did the music. As I said, Captain Shaw was horrible. Rafi's character, I don't know if they just wrote her poorly, or I don't know, I've never seen her in anything else. Maybe she really can't act, but that was horrible. It's not good.
To me, what this felt like is it felt like an expensive fan film where they were trying hard in their fan film to let you know that their Star Trek, the franchise they're building on, is Star Trek. The only character, now we only saw, the only Next Generation characters, we saw Riker and Picard. And I believe from and Beverly. And that was it. And then we saw 7 of 9, and then they brought back Rafi. Because that's another thing. I've heard people say over and over again, you have to take this, forget season 1 and 2, take this as its own thing. How am I supposed to do that with 7 of 9, who was introduced? You wouldn't know Picard except for season 2 of the Picard series. And then Rafi, they're bringing Rafi back. So how can I forget that this is part of that? I was willing to let that go, but they keep bringing stuff from the past. Laris came back too. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, I wish we'd see more of her, because that scene with Picard in front of the fireplace, that was the best part of the whole episode. It really went downhill from there. After the Laura scene at the fireplace, you got the bar scene with Riker. That was pretty decent. It wasn't as good, but it was still pretty good.
Yeah.
And then right after that, it went right downhill, and it never recovered for me.
Can we go on that security detail with Laris instead?
Yeah, that's probably a more interesting story. And with Rafi and this intelligence that she's working for, I was joking with you. It's like, oh, Kurtzman couldn't get his Section 31 series made, so I guess they just incorporated it into this.
Yeah. And I really didn't need to hear Will Riker make a prostate joke.
And it doesn't even make any sense. In the era they're living in, having prostate problems, and then he also made a joke about his bad knees. He should be able to get prosthetics for his knees, and they should be able to take care of his nighttime problem.
Well, you'd think that they'd be able to regenerate cartilage by then. So, wearing down of your joints, like your knees, wouldn't be an issue anymore, one would think. I mean, seriously. It's the 25th century.
And I want to say, of the 3 Next Generation characters that were in this, only Will Riker felt like himself.
Yep.
And Jonathan Frakes did a really good job with that, by the way. Beverly Crusher, I mean, if somebody told me that wasn't the actress, it was somebody else, I would just buy it, because she looks very different than she did last time I saw her. What she was doing, we'll have to wait and see what the next episodes are to see if maybe it'll all come together. And Patrick Stewart, he's still playing Patrick Stewart. There were some small moments where it felt like some Picard was coming out, but it mostly felt like Patrick Stewart. And you mentioned this to me, to give credit here, the problem is that Patrick Stewart, he looks and sounds old.
Yeah.
And Jean-Luc Picard, always had that presence to him, with his voice in particular.
Yes, command presence. That's what he had.
But when this character talks, he sounds frail and weak.
Yeah.
And honestly, it doesn't feel like Picard most of the time. I really think he's playing himself. And that's a shame.
Well, for a few seconds there, it was like I was watching the film Logan, if you remember that, when Professor X was debilitated and getting ready to die. It just,
And then some of the banter between Riker and Picard, I was telling you, it reminded me of grumpy old men from the 90s.
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of, that kind of jokey thing of old men who have, been friends for their lives. I do not understand. Now, we've only seen one episode, so I'm open that this gets better, open to the idea that this gets better. But the people saying that this is the best Star Trek we've had in a long time, I don't understand that. I really do not. This was mostly bad. This had the same problems that Kurtzman Trek has had ever since it started.
Well, that goes right back to what I was saying at the beginning. Everybody keeps talking about what this isn't. That this isn't, eyeballs being gouged out or...
Not yet.
Or batteries being eaten. But they're not talking about what it is. They keep comparing it to the rest of Kurtzman Trek. Yeah, okay, by that incredibly low bar, yeah, this probably is the best Star Trek we've had in a while, but that still doesn't mean that it's good. It's still crap.
This first episode, now, I'm open to the idea it gets better. I don't think the cinematography is going to get any better. I think it's going to be dark to the point where it's hard to see what's going on. I mean, it really is hard to see what's going on. But maybe the stories will get better. Maybe when Michael Dorn and LeVar Burton come in, maybe the story will pick up a bit more and it'll be more interesting. But I saw some people give this first episode review glowing marks. And at best, I'm going to give it 2 scenes that were good and maybe 1 more that was okay. And the rest of this was the same old, same old.
It's just another instance where I just wonder if, maybe 1 more pair of eyes on the thing. Maybe just 1 more editor could have gone through this before they decided, hey, let's do this. And maybe just somebody to say, yeah, maybe just do this instead or pull back on this. That's too much. Don't go over the top like that. They needed somebody to tell them when to stop.
Turn the music down. It's too loud. The dialogue can't be heard. I know you want to tell people it's Star Trek, but turn it down. People are talking now.
Because it's a shame because, again, there were a few scenes where you can see what this could have been, but then it wasn't. I mean, that Captain Shaw reminded me so much of the Tribble guy from the short treks.
People have bragged about this guy, too.
Ugh.
I guess they liked him in 12 Monkeys, the TV series. Didn't see him there. Was not impressed with his acting in this, I'll tell you that. He and Rafi could have a contest on who's the worst actor. So I cannot give good marks for this. I would honestly say that the season premiere of season 2 of Picard, where they introduced Q, that was a better episode than this.
That's because John Delancey is able to carry just about anything. I mean, I've seen him on MacGyver. I've seen him on My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, just as a voice of a character. And that guy, he could act just about anybody else under the table. I mean, really. He's got that charisma. They need more of that in this.
And maybe in the next few episodes, with not only these older next generation characters, newer ones or different ones coming in, maybe they'll introduce some newer characters that we like. To give credit, LaForge's daughter, she wasn't like a horrible character, what little they had of her. The only critique I had is it reminded me of Sulu's daughter scene from Generations, but like the actual character herself didn't seem like she was a bad character, so maybe they can build on her. I don't know. I don't know if we go back to the Titan. I assume we do, but maybe Seven gets kicked out of Starfleet and she joins up with the rest of them. I don't know.
I don't know. But if that's all we see of the Titan and Captain Shaw, then why was he so prevalent in the trailer?
I don't know. That character is so... I know he's supposed to be dislikable. Is that a word? But this was over the top. This was like Snidely Whiplash, Dudley Do-Right, bad guy type stuff.
It was so bad.
It was just bad. I don't know. I feel this problem happening. I think there's going to be a rift in the Star Trek community based on what this series is doing. And I don't know. I would like to think that the next few episodes are going to win me over and I'm going to say, you know what? Everything when it first starts out is rough, but it gets better. But if they keep doing what they did in this episode, I'm going to learn to despise this probably more than certainly season 1 of Picard, because season 2 is so horrible. This was better than eating car batteries. I'll give it that. So season 2 of Picard was worse than this. Absolutely. But I don't know about season 1 yet. We're going to have to wait and see. And that had giant flowers and stuff, but we're not done yet. So can I recommend this to anybody? No, I cannot. I would suggest, why don't you wait until we get through the whole season, and then we will give you an honest evaluation of what positives you could take from this. Maybe it does get better, but in good conscience, I can't recommend this first episode. It didn't feel like it was that big of a difference from what's come under Kurtzman Trek already.
Yeah, so far to me, it just seemed like more of the same.
Cranking up classic Star Trek music doesn't make it more Star Trek. Jonathan Frakes was the highlight of this episode.
Yes.
If you want to see this episode for his performance and you want to see Riker again, you will see Riker again if you watch this episode. That's it. That's the only big plus I can say here.
Yeah. So, those of you who watched this, what did you think? Did you think this was good? Or are you still on the fence? Or did you just outright hate it? Let us know in the comments.
Take care.